And we'd like to begin with a special speaker who actually brought his vehicle with him today. We'll invite you to see the Evo, a very innovative development, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But we're very pleased that our sponsoring partner for this GLACO meeting, Tata Technologies, would volunteer one of their leaders to be with us today. Mr. Kevin Power has worked as a solution architect, account executive, and electrical engineer at Tata Technologies for the last 12 years. During this time, he was initially involved with the implementation of various CATIA version 5 deployments, as we all struggle with, for customers in the automotive and aerospace industries. He has taught CATIA topics to a range of students and authored many methodologies and best practices for clients. After being involved with CATIA, he held the position of PLM Services Manager at Tata Technologies and was responsible for developing service offerings to various clients, along with offering pre-sale support. Mr. Power also has held the position of Lead Electrical Engineer at Tata Technologies and has been responsible for the design of electrical systems for automotive programs and BEV powertrains. Most recently, Mr. Powers holds the position of Dassault Product Manager within Tata Technologies, responsible for coordinating the sales and marketing of Dassault Systems software and services. It's a great pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Kevin Power.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. So I asked Keith yesterday what was the audience of the presentation that I would be addressing. And he said to me, well, it's a mixture between people who use CATIA products or Dassault products and a mixture of people who do design work. So what I've done today is I've come up with a presentation that hopefully speaks to both audiences. It will cover, some of the interests of those who are purely involved in vehicle design and some of those who are interested in more the application of Dassault products to engineering and PLM in particular. So the talk revolves around two topics. The first half, and I'll go through it in a fair amount of fairly quickly, is about the EMO vehicle that you can all look at outside. And the second half of this talk is a video, which I'll talk you through, which shows how we ran a proof of concept using Inovia V6 tools to demonstrate how a vehicle such as the EMO could be designed using that suite of products. So I will run through this firstly, and hopefully we can get through it in about 50 minutes. And I assume I can call for questions afterwards. We leave 5-10 minutes for questions. Okay. Brief overview of Tata Technologies. One of the things I'd like to show on this, just highlight on this particular slide, is that as an organization, we do engineering and design work, and we also do PLM software and services. And I think what you'll see in this presentation is kind of like a demonstration of the fusion of those two particular competencies that we carry as an organization. This is the sort of high-level executive summary of the EMO project. It was undertaken as a study, so at this point in time, there's clearly no intention to put it into production, and it was more used as an internal exercise to demonstrate our skills and capabilities in this particular area. I will describe in more detail the actual product that you can see outside, and I hope that after this presentation you can go and have a look at it and interact with some of the people who helped design it. So the question is, why EMO? This is a slide that kind of gives you a very high-level overview. I'm sure I don't have to repeat all the imperatives of the modern world that are driving us towards solutions such as electric vehicles, increased globalization, carbon emissions, rising world population, etc., etc. So based on that, when we started this study, we took that scenario and we said, look, one of the things we believe that would address those particular problems would be in a battery-powered electric vehicle. Did some research in terms of the volumes and where electric vehicles are going, and this is the result of some of our research to show projected volumes, projected take-up of electric vehicles up to 2015, 2020 and beyond. So based on that, we decided, well, let's go ahead and make sure that our study is is a electric vehicle, and let's see what we can do to produce something that addresses these particular problems. Team brainstorming, we came up with some of these imperatives that we thought we would have to include in the design of the particular vehicle. Those, you can read them up on the screen there. Those are imperatives that we believe customers are interested in, and they could be used as marketing tools to convince someone to buy a product such as this. So those imperatives bring us to what we then defined at a very high level as the vehicle DNA. And this is kind of the design side of what we're doing in this particular project. And so the DNA consists of the 5 core values that you can see up on the screen there. We wanted to produce something that was good value, is the right size, it was styled properly, it was green and eco-friendly, but it also included safety and drivability characteristics. So there's the DNA. Let's try and do a design to balance out those particular requirements. So having come up with the DNA, we kind of reverse engineered into some studies to ask, well, is there data that backs up the fact that people would be interested in buying those types of characteristics? So here's a couple of slides that we put together that back up the research that demonstrate the research we did to back up our DNA statement as such. Estimation of EV cost of ownership. So would an electric vehicle actually save you money? What are the government incentives associated with electric vehicles? And who's the target customers? What type of people would be interested in buying a car like this, and how many people would be interested in buying a car like this? This is some other research we did related to the maximum amount of miles that any individual drives on a particular day. Occupancy rate trends, occupancy rates are tending to trend downwards. You get more people, single people in cars. And then also a little bit of a look at the competition, where small cars are selling, what the price point is, what the volumes are in the market, and so on and so on. So having done all that, we then started on the whole study. Now, I haven't got enough time to cover in detail, the complete, everything that we did. So keeping in mind that this is a design forum, I've put a few slides in here to show some of the design activities that we went through in order to, get to the point of designing this particular vehicle. So we did some ideation around, the 2, 3, 4 wheel vehicles. What do customers want? We did some thought processes around, what sort of climates are we going to aim this vehicle at? We looked at concepts. You sketch it out, you let your mind go, and you come up with these types of concepts. We looked at studying ingress and egress. It was another little sub-project that we did, and you'll see the results of this as I go through the presentation. We obviously had some styling, and we do some sketches and renderings and so on to try and get an idea of what this thing should look like and what it would feel like. So there was a whole design activity that went on at the beginning of our project. But then, of course, as you're fully aware, in any vehicle development program, there are a couple of intrusive, obnoxious individuals called engineers, right? And an engineer goes, no, I don't want to deal with all these sketches and all these fancy pictures. I want some figures and some facts. So as a sort of parallel activity, we developed a project brief and a vehicle technical spec, and we put some hard numbers to what we wanted the performance of this vehicle to actually achieve. So, how do we take all these ideas and actually convert them into reality? So this is a slide that shows some of the objectives and targets that we set ourselves. Significant amongst this is $20,000 price point. We felt, that would be at the sort of cusp of affordability versus driving costs and so on. Another little subtlety here is that, or another point to bring out is that we thought we would use a non-weld and non-paint assembly process. So that would be eco-friendly, it would reduce the footprint of the manufacturing that's required. So it was designed with that particular objective in mind. We had some specs around the powertrain, some specs around the suspension, some specs around the specifications around the safety that this vehicle was going to do, performance, and then lastly, we were heading for a very low cost of operation and a very high level of fuel efficiency. So in order to validate some of what we'd done, those hard numbers allowed us to sort of crystallize it down into dimensions and weights and other targets. So there were a whole lot of other targets that were associated with that. And we took them and we plotted them on this path here. And we identified that the EMO actually sits in a little bit of white space. And so hopefully it's a good piece of white space that people would be interested in buying. So the next couple of slides kind of show the design track associated with the vehicle. Again, as I said, I'm trying to slant this presentation towards the design side. So we came up with the themes. We narrowed the themes down, and then ultimately they translated themselves into the concept vehicle that we built, which is outside. In parallel with that whole design, and as a sort of parallel activity, the obnoxious members of the team worked on the full engineering of the vehicle. So we developed in 3D CAD in CATIA a full vehicle. We did all the packaging studies. We developed a powertrain in conjunction with some subcontractors. We made sure that it looked feasible. We developed a bill of material, a full bill of material for this vehicle to make sure that the cost points would be within that $20,000 target and the investment required so that you could build up a business case. We did crash analysis on the structure, so we developed a body and white structure and did a whole lot of crash analysis on it to verify that it would meet the various 5-star or 3-star ratings that we'd set ourselves up for. We developed performance simulations, so we did a whole lot of modeling to make sure that it would meet the range, it would meet the acceleration, top speed requirements. We packaged up the lighting to make sure that it would also meet some of the lighting requirements. And so in general, we engineered this car to a point where you could say it's taken to what an OEM would classically call program approval. So that's the type of point where there's enough data to support someone being able to make a business decision to say, well, yes, okay, if we put down $500 million, we think that we could get a return on that investment. So that's what we did in parallel with the design side of it. So we ended up with this complete vehicle, and so then we built a concept vehicle, which is the one outside. And so now I'm going to go through a couple of slides that show you the end result and where we got to and some of the characteristics of what we believe will fulfill the DNA that we had originally set ourselves out to try and achieve. So one of the characteristics of this particular vehicle is that because it's a pure electric vehicle designed from ground up, you don't have to compromise in order to fit in an ICE engine. So, a lot of electric vehicles, they kind of have this dual purpose. They have a place where you fit an ICE engine. And, that allows you some compromises. That forces you into certain compromises in terms of size and weight and so on. But we took the view that this is a pure electric vehicle, and that actually allowed us a lot of flexibility. It allowed us to make it a lot smaller. It allowed us to, get some aerodynamic gains out of our design. It allowed us to produce a very efficient package for full-size adults in a very small footprint, and I'll come to that just now. So one of the characteristics, again, is it's got these rear hinge doors, and what the rear hinge doors allows you to do is to use the back seats either to accommodate 2 full-size adults or as a storage and cargo space. With access to, put your golf clubs if you so wish, or in this case, your flat screen TV. I think one of those boxes is a flat screen TV. So because of that sort of access, part of the concept is the rear hatch doesn't open. It's fixed, and as a cost-saving, weight-saving thing, we designed in LED lighting that's integral to that particular rear glass. and that allows you simplicity of assembly, it saves you a bit of weight, etc., etc. The interior made it nice and elegant. That's how I like to think of it. Some people think of it as sparse, but you know, it's depending on your point of view. Again, the concept is minimize the amount of stuff inside the interior and go towards a lot of the interaction with the driver via a touchscreen type interface, so that you don't have to press a lot of dials, you rather use the touchscreen interface to do that. So this slide here demonstrates kind of what we believe we've achieved as a final result in terms of a packaging efficiency number. The number you see circled in that green, by that green circle, is basically the shadow of the car. So if you were to imagine you take a light and shine it directly over the car, and you measure the area of the shadow cast by the car, and then you divide it by the number of passengers, legitimate number of passengers that you can put in it, you come up with this figure per person square meterage. And you can see in comparison to these competitive vehicles, we have achieved what we believe to be the best benchmark. So it's a very, very compact car, but it's very spacious inside. Again, we did a whole lot of calculations, and based on our models, we believe that we can come up with an EPA sticker that looks like this. I'm not sure if you're 100% familiar with this particular EPA sticker, but the figures on here are calculated using parameters that are defined by the federal government. So it's not a question of you can invent something to put on the sticker. You kind of have to verify your figures against parameters and assumptions that are actually laid down by the federal government. So we believe that a car like this, as it's in its form right now, would give you the equivalent of 150 miles per gallon, and it would save you $10,500 in fuel costs over a 5-year period. So we've also did, for this particular vehicle, a complete business case. I don't want to go through that, we don't have enough time, but just to show you a little bit of a highlight here, we believe that we've come up with a design that is disruptive, both in terms of price, it's got the lowest price point of any vehicle out there, and in terms of the fuel economy. And we did a whole lot of calculations around cost of ownership, leasing models, how much it's going to buy, how much it would cost to buy, etc., etc. And I think that if someone was to do the calculation and say, what is my total cost of ownership over a 5-year period for a vehicle like this, it would be less than buying an equivalent small car, say, for example, a Nissan Versa, for example. So if you took the cost of ownership of that versus the cost of ownership of our particular vehicle, it would be less. So that is the end of the presentation on the vehicle, the design side of the vehicle, what we try to achieve. Obviously, there's a lot more detail behind this. This is a complete study, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have in terms of engineering and other things. And we'll have Peter Davis, our designer, will be outside afterwards. So feel free after this particular presentation to ask that. So now I'm going to shift gears, and I'm going to now go into the engineering nerdy stuff, right? And this is the part of the presentation that's aimed at the CATIA, the Dassault product users. So to give you a little bit of a background, we completed this design in probably about mid-2011, I'd say. And all the CAD and all the design work, all the studies and all the stuff was done in CATIA V5. After that, we thought, well, we're doing this study, we're doing this pilot. Let's take that data and let's see if we could use Inovia V6 as a legitimate design tool to actually, execute a project such as this. So we took the data that we had and we imported it into an Inovia V6 environment. And we conducted a couple of proofs of concept, if you want, of using the data to show, how we would manage a project like that using the Inovia V6 and CATIA V6 suite of tools. So what I have up now next is a video, which is the result of one of our proofs of concepts. And so what I'll do is I'll talk through the video. I'll play the video, I'll talk through it, and I'll try and explain some of the high points in the particular proof of concept that we did. So as I said, we put all the data that we had generated into the Inovia V6 database. So as you're fully aware, Inovia V6 not only does CAD data storage, it does things like requirements management, it does program and product line management, it does program management, it does engineering change notices, and so on. So the sort of test case scenario that we set up, let me just pause this quickly, was to say, let's assume that we're going to change the style of the steering wheel. But now we're going to do this in a very controlled environment, simulating and mimicking what a real life program would look like. And so as I go through the scenario, I'd just like to point out at the bottom of the slide there, you can see the sort of participants in the cast of characters, if you want, that are part of this scenario: a product manager, a program manager, a design, and 2 design engineers. And the whole intent of this is to say, we were unhappy with the original steering wheel. We want to change the design of the steering wheel. That's because somebody in the design studio said, it'll look cool if we could drop down the spokes, So the first part of this presentation goes into this. So let me just show you this here. This is the kind of flow that we simulated and set up. So it's kind of an initial review, define and manage the change, actually do the change, and then from that, go into make sure that the task is completed, close out all the engineering change notices, and then do a final review. So I'll just talk as we go along here. Come now. Right. And point out, kind of like the pertinent parts of this particular environment. Now, while I'm talking here, so the first part of this is the initial review. So basically what happens here is the product manager logs in and he has a look at the current state of the program. So while this is going along, so here he is, he's going to query for product lines, because as I said, Inovia V6 also manages product lines for you. So what we did is we set up a product line called electric vehicles, and then we made the EMO2 sort of like one of the products as part of that product line. Now the product line has with it a set of requirements. So these are the properties associated with the product line. And what happens now is that we're going to look at the requirements associated with that. So here's a complete list of all the requirements for that particular product, all the way down, performance requirements, aesthetic requirements, whatever it is. So these were the actual requirements that we had for the vehicle that we developed, and we imported this into the Inovia V6 environment. So because we specifically worried about the steering wheel, we can drill down into the steering wheel particular requirements and have a look what they require. We can have a look at the life cycle associated with that particular requirement. This one is being got past validated. It's at review at this point in time. And then the next part of this is to say, well, where is it? Let's have a look at the associated project plan. So one of the things that Inovia V6 does really well is it's a completely integrated environment. And as you can see here, what's happening is the guy is in the same interface and he's looking at all these various aspects of how you control a complex vehicle program. So here he is, he's looking at a work breakdown structure for the particular vehicle. So this is essentially a Microsoft project plan, but on steroids, right? And it shows here that there's some tasks associated with the interior. But there's not one at this point in time associated with changing the steering wheel. Bill of material. So here we go. You have a bill of material associated with this particular vehicle. And the bill of material will open up just now, and then you'll see how the manager drills down into the specific part number or the part that he wants, which is the steering wheel in this particular case. And he has a look at the steering wheel specification and some more specifications associated. So this diagnoses that it's actually a 3D CAD part that is used to, fulfill the specification of the particular steering wheel. So what happens next is this is still the program manager looking at things here. He hasn't decided that he's actually going to do this change yet. What happens next now is he says, well, that's all very good. I like looking at the bill of material. Let's see if we can have a look at the actual CAD data. So this is a 3D Live experience. This is the program manager. He would be a consumer of CAD data, therefore he doesn't need full CAD authoring capabilities. He merely has to just look at CAD data. So here he is in the 3D Live environment, having a look at all the CAD data. And clearly he has the capability with this intuitive workspace of being able to drill down into the specific component that he's interested in looking at. Explode out the bill of material, so subsidiary turntable or subsidiary experience that comes along, and there's the part that he's specifically interested in. So the next part of this is what this is still the project manager looking at this. The next part of this is he's now going to get hold of a designer and say to a designer, can I actually change this steering wheel into the place that you want to do? So in order to do that, he's going to set up a co-review in the environment. Sorry, he's just doing a little bit more of examination here. This examination just can narrow down what you're looking at in terms of data. So you don't have to look at everything that's extraneous and irrelevant. You can have a look at just what you're interested in and the context that it's in. So anyway, so here he is. He's decided he's going to change the steering wheel. He is now initiating a co-review with an actual CAD designer. This co-review, it's important to point out, could be done between any two people anywhere, basically, provided you have the infrastructure in place. And so he's working in the 3D Live environment, but the designer is actually working in a CATIA V6 environment. So you have this little instant messaging thing that goes on, and you can send little messages to everybody, the chat, the IM, what he requests the designer to say, look, we're going to have a look at a co-review here. And he starts this co-review session. And then I believe the next step is that the designer accepts the co-review session, and up pops on the screen what the project manager is seeing on his screen. So there we go, share the session data. So what's happening here is, the two screens are synchronized. So, this is kind of like two people working together. As he moves things, it moves on the designer's screen. So the next little bit of this is, I guess you could do this with a conference call. But what he's going to do now is he's going to use some markup tools, and he's going to explain to the designer what needs to be done in terms of producing this design change. So here we go, a little bit of markup tool. He's saying, it'd be nice if we could droop down the spoke there to make it look a little bit better. That's what the objective of that is. And you can see in this window here that you can use the instant messaging facility to, talk back and forth between the two guys. And then I think the next thing that happens is he goes along and says, well, that's the one change we want to make. The other change we want to make is we want to flatten the bottom part of the steering wheel, and draws that up. And the designer comes back and says, yep, he's pretty certain he can do that. Just, let's get it organized. So it's one of the things, by the way, if you can read, I don't know if you can read all the details in here, but both these guys are called Chris, which was a coincidence. It wasn't a managed event as such. They do have different last names. So we're back at the project manager, and he's now finished with the co-review. So now we get into the, the nitty-gritty, unfortunately, of actually managing a change in a structured and controlled environment. So to do this change, the first thing that's going to happen is an engineering change notice has got to be generated. So you can see here, this would be the responsibility of someone like the program manager or the project manager would generate an engineering change notice to say, please go ahead and do this particular change that we just discussed, right? So here we go. He's created this engineering change notice, and he's allocating it medium priority, meaning that it's got to be done tomorrow. Because when your boss phones you up and says low priority, you think, well, that's 2 days' time. And when he phones you up and says medium, you think, well, that's 2 days, that's tomorrow. And when he says high, it's like next hour. So the next thing is, sorry, what I missed there is there was a life cycle associated with that engineering change notice, and he just took the notice and promoted it up to, review. Now what's happening here is that this is the requirement associated with that steering wheel. So the existing requirement is being revisioned up so that it's kind of like a released A version. And we're going to create another version because the steering wheel requirements changed. It's changed from being a flat one with horizontal spokes to, so here we're replacing the old revision with the new revision. Just a little point of notice, that little upward yellow arrow is an automatic indicator that comes up to show that there is a new revision available and you should be able to change it. So again, integrated environment. We've changed the requirement. We've come up with a new requirement, integrated environment. Now we can attach the engineering change notice to that particular requirement. So when the engineering change notice is completed and closed out, then someone can go and examine the requirement and say, yep, that requirement has been satisfied. We've done all the CAD work and the due diligence that's required in order to be able to do that. So here we're changing the requirement to say, give yourself a flat 10-degree on the steering wheel and a flat of 157. So sorry, this goes really fast, but as I say, I'm available to answer questions afterwards. Next thing is you have a project plan. So here's the program manager. He sees, well, we've got an existing project plan. What we're going to do now is we're going to go into the project plan. This is using the program management capabilities within Ovia, Program Central. And he's going to create a new work breakdown structure here, a little task within the program to say, please go ahead and change that steering wheel. So again, the way because if it's an integrated environment, once he's created that task, it's put into the program plan. The task is assigned to that specific designer who did the co-reviews because he knows what's going on. The designer is then automatically notified via an email to say you've got a new task that you've got to execute and get done. And then so promoting the task to assign. So here we go, life cycle again, get that task up to assign. And the designer then gets an email and says, right, you've got to go and do this task. So here it is. He's going to now actually do the change himself. So he comes along and he logs into his mailbox. That's the next little bit here. And he says, here's my new task. And in the mailbox, the email contains a link. Click on the link, and that is associated directly with what he's got to do. So here's the engineering change notice that is required of him. It's got a life cycle, so he's going to promote it to active to show that he's working on it, and away he goes. So version the steering wheel. He brings it up in CATIA and has a look at it. Oh, sorry, so this is creating a new version because he knows he's going to have to change. So take the old version, create a new version, and then make the changes accordingly because the old version was probably locked or released or frozen or whatever the case it was. He's now going to propagate that in. So he's got a new version, and he can then, using the power of CATIA, so version A, new version is now active. He can, and you see this screen updates to show the new version in the search window. There we go. Clicks on the compass there, well, not the compass, and he says, he notices, by the way, so this is fairly significant, is he notices that the original steering wheel CAD is actually locked by another user. He's not the guy who owns this particular part or locked this. So we'll come to that later. But here he is in CATIA, using the magic of CATIA to make a couple of changes using parameters. And he's got his new steering wheel. And there's a little bit of an inconsistency in this demonstration because the designer used a little bit of his own initiative and put some fillets on this particular steering wheel, which he didn't discuss with the program manager. So he's probably going to get into trouble for it, but you know, hey, for the sake of the demonstration, let's assume it's going all right. So he's done his changes, he's quite happy with it, and he tries to propagate the changes in the database. He gets an error message saying, no, you're not allowed to do this, it's locked by another user. So in order to be able to propagate the changes in the database, he's going to have to get hold of the locked user and get him to do the propagation. So again, now co-review. So the two Chris's are back at it again, and they initiate a co-review session. And this time it's from designer to designer, so it's not 3D Live to CATIA v6, it's CATIA v6 to CATIA v6, the actual authoring tool. They start their co-review, have a little bit of a chat, did you enjoy your Friday night at the pub type of thing, and away they went. So that is the guy who owns the steering wheel, he's got the original version. He hasn't got the modified version. So the designer who's doing the actual engineering change notice is now going to send him some information to show him what the modifications are, make sure that the new designer, the actual lock owner, is happy and on board with that and accept the changes. So screen grab, sent across the co-review. So the screen grab, you can like pull this little slider back and forth and you can see what the differences are between the original and the proposed new. Get an idea of what that actually entails. The lock owner says, well, that doesn't look too bad. We can carry on our little chat here. The next little part of this is a very unique feature of the Inovio toolset is what the designer that is not the lock owner, the guy who's made the change as it stands right now, is able to do. He's able to select out of the CATIA v5 history tree the specific features that were changed only. And he sends those features across to the lock owner. So this implies that you don't have to move heavy, large CAD data files around. You can send these little small files that contain the change only. And here the guy is examining exactly what the changes are. So it's a parameter change and a fillet change. And he can then integrate those little changes so you can, into his part. And once he's happy with them, he can go ahead and say, yes, let's merge the changes into the part that I have. And so this little part of the demonstration here is showing the capability of taking that small little change file, accepting it, and then merging it into the overall CAD data that he owns. So the merge has been done, the changes are in, everyone's happy. And the next part of the demonstration, now they're just talking about, who they met at the pub on Friday night. And then they decide to get back to serious business. So now the owner says, right, I'm going to propagate this change into the database. So because he's the owner, the lock owner, he can go ahead and propagate it. So now the new version is there, it's all ready to go. Next part of this demonstration shows how so this could be done by the designer or by the program manager for that matter, to show how the new version is replaced in the bill of material. So you've got to go into the bill of material and make sure that it's updated to take this new revision, new version, and get it instantiated as such. Yep, so, looking at all the CAD data, check that the new version is there. Yep, it looks good. And he's propagating the bill of material. So the subtlety here is that the bill of material can actually be changed. This is sort of kind of what they'd call the bottom-down approach, or bottom-up approach. So you're changing the bill of material out of a CAD environment. You're obviously fully aware that depending on how you set up the system, bills of material can be changed independent of the CAD environment, can be changed within this Innovia V6 interface, the web-based interface. Anyway, what's happening here is that the designer is going down and he's just double-checking to make sure that he's actually propagated the bill of material change accordingly. So you can see there we're on to version B, revision B. So he's double-checked, yep, the bill of material is up to date. Make sure that we got the right properties, and we're good to go. So the very last part of this demonstration, we're almost finished, is to show how now you've got to go and do the tidy up work in terms of the process, right? Because process is important. So the tidy up work is where we've got to go and show that the task has been completed within the project management system. We've got to go and close out the engineering change notice. So sorry, here as part of the integrated environment within Innovia V6 is you can associate deliverables with specific tasks within your program management suite. So clearly that's quite a useful tool. So that's currently what's happening. And then I think the next part of it is, yep, we've got a life cycle change here. So we're going to promote the task in that particular program management to complete. And it's complete. Now, so something that this demonstration doesn't show, but worth mentioning, is clearly from program management with that whole program control structure you have, you can generate reports and you can generate views and you can generate stuff. So, the reports would show 30% of tasks are complete, 10% of tasks are behind the due date, and so on and so on. So there's a whole lot of powerful tools in that particular suite of products. So it's just been promoted now, the engineering, I believe that was the engineering change. Oh, sorry, this is the engineering change. So here was the engineering change notice. This is going to be taken to complete. Within this demonstration here, it's a little bit quick, so it's not quite 100% correct. Well, I wouldn't say correct, it was not 100% shown every little step, but basically what's happening in here is that the guy who's asking for the change is sending a notice to the approver to say, please accept the change and approve it and propagate it to the next state. So this set of screens is showing the whole formalized life cycle and process that is being followed by the designer, the guy who approves the engineering change, and then finally says yes, it's complete as an engineering change. That's what this cycle is going through here. And yep, someone's approving it. So again, of course, I mean, you guys are fully aware of the whole structure of engineering changes and the formal process that goes around it and why they're important and why they're done and et cetera, et cetera. The point about this demonstration is to show that they all managed within an integrated environment that includes your CAD, your project management, et cetera, et cetera. So that kind of concludes the whole demonstration. It was very quick, and I hope that you found that of some use and of some interest. If you want more details, if you want to actually drill down into some of what I did there, I went through that very quickly. I'm more than happy to discuss that after the show. So did I hit my time?
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing, good. Thank you very much. Yeah, so this is, as I qualified before I started showing you the demonstration, this was a proof of concept we did, right? So, so what I should add is that we've now gained enough confidence from the proof of concept and our exploratory work using an Innovia V6 with the data that we produced to generate that EMO vehicle, that if we were to carry on, or we were to get a similar project, we would carry on using this type of environment. As soon as someone gives us some work to do, right? Yes.
Okay, one moment. For the sake of the video capture, could you possibly repeat some of the questions from the audience because you don't have the whole microphone before you answer those?
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
At the first part of when you were showing the design process, and you mentioned that the MO has the best, value, I guess, to the customer.
Right.
Versus smart or me. But I didn't quite understand what makes it really that much better in terms of packaging or space. How can you work with this?
Well, so the question is, for the benefit of the video, is that I mentioned in the presentation that the EMO is better than the Smart and the Mini in terms of packaging, right? And why do we believe it's got more value than those comparable vehicles, right? Okay, so if you recall that slide, what we did is we kind of invented a parameter that is it's not really a standard parameter that you'd see in vehicle specifications. So the parameter was the footprint of the vehicle, the shadow area of the vehicle, divided by the number of full-size adults that you could get into that vehicle. So a Smart, for example, is only a two-person vehicle. There's no ways you could fit 4 adults into a Smart. The IQ, the Toyota IQ, is really specifically a 3.5 vehicle because the way the IQ is made is you could never fit 4 full-size adults into it, right? But we believe with our vehicle, we can fit 4 full-size adults into it. And so if you divide the sort of footprint area by the number of adults, full-size adults you can fit in that vehicle, you come up with this parameter that I showed you. And we believe that that particular parameter is best in class in comparison to all those comparative vehicles, right? So it's kind of like an invented parameter to give a bit of numbers, a bit of data to something we claim. But I mean, you can't say that, it's a bit of a stretch to say that the EMO vehicle is totally better than all its competitors. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Some great questions. We do have time for a few more. We have a few extra minutes here before we serve our lunch. Additional questions for Tata? Here.
Is it possible on the three-dimensional representation you showed of the interior for a flag to exist on a part that says change pending, so that other people that were looking at the total could see that there was a pending change, and then actually after it was approved, then it would flag as approved, as changed, so that you didn't have to go through lists or the latest updates, that visually, I'm thinking of like Ancestry.com where you get a little leaf notice. So I could look at something and I could see what was sort of in limbo, and if it represented something that I had an interest in, I could invite myself maybe into that conversation.
Yes, so 2 questions. So let me repeat the questions. The first question was, when you examine a 3D CAD representation of a vehicle such as we had up on the demonstration, is it possible to distinguish between which parts are like kind of frozen, which parts are still work in progress, which parts maybe are going to be subject to change in the future? And the second part of the question was, can I invite myself into the conversation, right? So what's not shown in this particular, there is a specific capability within Innovia to do exactly what you're asking. It's not shown on this particular video, but that the wheel at the bottom of the screen has certain buttons you can push. And so one of the buttons you push, it'll actually change the colors of all the CAD geometry that you're looking at to show what's released, what's work in progress, and it'll even show you, look, here's a part that you're seeing in this revision, but there is a new pending revision out there. Okay, so you can visually actually answer the question that you're looking at. Now, to invite yourself into the conversation, that goes into kind of, you can subscribe in the database to events. So, for example, you could go to a particular part and say, if someone changes this part, revisions it up, or does something to to do it, then it'll send you an email and saying someone did something to this particular part, and there's a whole range of possibilities in the way that operates. But that's kind of the mechanism you would use to, quote, invite yourself into the conversation, right?
I was thinking of someone that was controls that would be affected by the orientation of the folks. So they might want to orient. Maybe they had something that was an issue that was also being changed for one reason or another, and they would want to innovate with the reorientation of their folks.
Yeah. So that might have impact. What you're saying is that the reorientation strokes might have impact on other parts, right? Because, for example, for sure it's going to impact, the visibility of the driver, right? Because they do the studies, the rim block studies, right? So you're going to be worried about the rim block. So you'd be, if you're in one of the packaging and ergonomics guys, you'd be worried about the rim block. So.
Question here, Jeff?
The live review, pretty cool, where you have two people on the screen at one time, shooting but thinking about the region, like North America and Asia, where the times just don't line up. Is there a way, or maybe even another scenario where the change takes weeks? Is there a way to have a different workspace that designer is working on to make that next change before it can be approved into the system? Or how would those scenarios work? Where you're not actually trying to accomplish it in a live scenario.
Yeah, so to repeat the question, the video showed a live co-review, if you want. And so the question is, assuming people are not awake at the same time, is it possible to mimic that type of functionality with something else so that people could look at something and say, oh, something's changing, or maybe this is going to do. And I believe the answer to that is that as an individual designer, so I qualify this a little bit to say you're getting a little bit out of my area of expertise here. We'd have to verify it. But I believe there's a functionality for an individual designer to create exactly what you're talking about as a workspace, right? And then it's kind of like a sandbox, and he can do stuff in there without it impacting the formal system that's available. And then I guess he can assign viewing rights to his workspace, so that if someone wanted to see what the hell he was doing prior to it being released formally, he could go and look at his workspace. But that might be a mechanism to achieve. Yeah, that might be a mechanism to achieve what you're trying to achieve, right? So sorry, one of the other things you can do is that because it's an integrated database, what you can do is in a sort of examination session, you can take a whole lot of slide shows or slide shots of what you're trying to do, and you can store them in the database. And so someone can go and pick up those particular pictures of what you've been doing in the 3D CAD and have a look to see what the thoughts and ideas are of an impending change. So that is another mechanism for achieving what you want to do. Sorry, yes.
Oh, great question. One more question before we adjourn to lunch. Someone new?
Not this ever happens in the industry, right? Say someone, an engineer, decides to start changing the gate surface.
Yep. No, that doesn't happen.
Well, I get flagged up for someone playing the gate surface.
Sorry?
Will I get flagged up for someone else testing the gate surface?
So to repeat the question, not that this ever happens in the industry, and I guarantee it never happens, is say an engineer wanted to change this Class A surface, would that get flagged in the system? So I guess the answer to that is that the security model would be set up in such a way that no engineer could ever touch the Class A surface. He could never do an author and actually change it, right? If that was the way the business process, that's the way the business decided to actually set up the system. Now, I mean, technically, I guess it's feasible that you could allow engineers access to the Class A surface, but and then I guess you get into other mechanisms that we just described about, what's impending change and et cetera. But the basic answer to your question is I'd imagine the security model would be set up such that no engineer could view Class A surface, provided you had, yeah. Yeah, they can't replace. I mean, that was part of that demonstration, you know, had that lock owner, right? So, you know, the other guy could view it and he could fiddle around with it, but he couldn't actually propagate it into the database as an official release, right? So you'd do something similar with Class A surface.
No. One final.
All right. I'm curious if the designers that initially sketched the concept were part of the conversation when the 3D surfaces were developed, how they integrated it, because the way it was showing, it just basically we're talking CAD versus CAD, right? Is there a way to bring sketching there or something like that as compared or that?
Yep. So Dan, is Peter around? Dan, is Peter? Did he? Oh, I need him to answer this question. Yeah. I need him to answer the question. So I'm not exactly 100% qualified to answer the question, but I'll do my best.
Peter's going to be out there all day.
Yes. Yes. But anyway, to repeat the question was, the way my presentation came across, it appeared as if the CAD world and the design world were totally divorced, right? Right. And was that reality? No, it was not reality. So clearly the design process, I apologize if that it came across like that, but that I only have X amount of time to do this presentation. But the reality of why we were doing this particular EMO project is, you know, the design guys were developing the sketches, and then they developed the 3D surface, the Class A surface in, I believe they developed it in Alias. And then the Alias stuff was imported into CATIA V5, and the engineering staff who did all the package studies and did all the, you know, the actual detailed design beneath the skin of the Class A surface were constrained by that Class A surface, right? And then, as you're fully aware, in any automotive design, there's kind of like a whole iterative process that goes on between the obnoxious, intrusive individuals and the cool guys who, you know, produce the design. And so it goes, it's this eternal battle, you know.
The cool people are most of our audience today.
Yeah. So yes, so there was a period of about 3 or 4 months where we did a complete kind of iterative, collaborative, if you want, a thing where the engineers were saying you can't do that, and the designers say yes, I want to do that because it looks nice, you know. And then you get into this whole argument. Well, we want to make the car look more muscular, you know, and so we want to soften those lines over there, you see. And then the engineer will say, well, if you do that, my radiator's not going to fit. And so you can't do that. And so then someone eventually has to say, well, Mr. Engineer, make your radiator fit one way or the other. Or Mr. Designer, you can't have your muscular lines. You're going to have to soften them up to be feminine or whatever the case is, you see. So I'm quite good at speaking the lingo of the
So not only we're very grateful for Kevin Powers' great presentation, but we're also grateful that the Tata team brought along the actual EMO vehicle, a one-of-a-kind that is parked just outside the door, and will soon be joined by the entire Ford Mustang team and the Chrysler SRT Viper team later this afternoon. Going to be an exciting day, but let's show a round of applause for Kevin Powers. Now, I'm really glad we took that final question, because it was a question regarding the sketch being implemented and integrated into the entire design process. This designer cafe is meant to be very interactive today. At the top of every hour, we'll feature a very special speaker. The next one at 1 o'clock, the Ford Mustang design lead, Robert Gilardi. So please feel free to stick with us until then. But part of the interactive portion of this, and as Phil Bouchard from Dassault Systems designed it, is he brought some of the most talented engineers, some of the most talented designers he has in his team. Dre Clemens and Paul Donovan. They've set up demonstration stations to our right and left, just beyond the catering area. Feel free to interface with them as they present to you not only the new CATIA Natural Sketcher, but also the live rendering suite, Imagine in Shape, and the complete modeling suite. Again, make sure you see Dre Clemens and Paula Donovan in the rear. Otherwise, feel free to join us now for a catered lunch. Thank you very much to Keith Nagara, who's also hosting the main event just a bit later. Feel free also to notice all the phenomenal designs. I haven't really been in a more inspirational room than here in this gallery at LTU. I think they've done a phenomenal job. Round of applause for LTU and the great students.